I'm Stephanie Jordan. I'm the local food program manager at Sustainable Solano, and welcome to our cooking class today. It's exciting to have all of you guys with us. We had really a lot of people register for this class, so I think the New Year's resolution is kicking in and everyone's ready to eat healthy and get some immune boosting foods going in their system. So this is the Immune Boosting Foods cooking class with Chef Lisa Nunez-Hancock, who is joining us today. And as some of you may know, this is part of a larger series of cooking classes that we are doing for about the next 6 months or so, and hopefully more beyond that. We're working on more funding. But the goal is to raise awareness of a lot of the local crops that are grown here in Solano County. Right now it is wintertime, so you're gonna see what we have in store for you right now. I know there's somebody joining us from Australia, so you're in a whole different climate. But a lot of this is pretty widely available. So it's also part of our larger goal to build a more resilient local food system here in Solano County. And a lot of this information can be found on our website, which is sustainablesolano.org. So you'll see past cooking classes there and a couple ones that we're planning for the future and a little bit more about that work. So I know we're all pretty Zoom efficient now. So many of you know the drill here. You can post any questions in the chat, or at the end of Lisa's presentation, you're welcome to raise your hand and then we can unmute you and you can speak directly with Lisa and ask her questions directly. So either one of those is fine. I will be kind of fielding questions as we go and trying to keep track of it all. And we look forward to having a great discussion after the cooking demo. So I am very pleased to welcome Lisa Nunez-Hancock. We've been collaborating together for probably about 5 years, I think, in various capacities. And so I will turn it over to her now with her immune boosting food.
So welcome everyone, and thank you for taking time out of your busy schedules to join us for this immune boosting foods cooking workshop. Again, my name is Lisa Nunez-Hancock, and I'm a culinary arts instructor and a natural food chef. And I've been teaching healthy cooking classes for about 15 years through my You Are What You Eat program, mostly throughout California, but now in Australia. My workshops stress farm-to-table concepts and plant-forward cooking. I'd like to thank Stephanie Jordan and Allison Nagel with Sustainable Solano for helping make this workshop happen. And again, I would like to remind you, we would like to save all of your questions for the end of the workshop when we do our Q&A. And if I don't get to your question today, I'll try to address it in an email. So here we are in January, and hopefully we've made it through the holidays healthy, and we are in the middle of winter, and you know, it's the time of year when colds and flu and COVID and Omicron and those things are still with us. And if you're a little bit like me, you probably indulged in all sorts of delicious, rich, and sometimes naughty foods during the holidays. My unhealthy eating seems to start around Halloween with Halloween candy, and it kind of continues through Thanksgiving, and it kind of goes through the holidays and up until New Year's Day. So by January, you know, I'm feeling it's time to sort of clean up my act and to get back on track with healthy eating and to kind of degunk my gut. So part of a holistic approach to boosting our immune systems includes other things apart from food. So healthy sleep, and that can be anywhere from 7 to 10 hours, depending on the individual and depending, you know, on different age groups. Lowering our stress levels. And I will tell you what I'm doing right now in the sort of to get me in the mood And to lower my stress levels, I have incense burning in the other room. And I have a little sake here, and I've been sipping on green tea while I've been prepping today. More ideas for sort of boosting our immune systems involve exercise in nature, taking walks outside, and eating healthy, high fiber foods. There are numerous natural fresh foods that researchers tell us are beneficial to boosting our immune health through feeding our microbiota. So the recipe that I am going to share with you today is a Japanese-inspired miso soup that is not only jam-packed with immune-boosting ingredients, but it's also a light cleansing soup, which is warming during these chilly months. Before we start on the recipe, I want to talk a little bit about immune boosting foods in general. And for more detailed information, I wrote a blog on this subject early on in the pandemic. And we have a link to that blog, which we're going to put into the chat. But I go into a lot of detail. And I have some great resources for books. And I also have, I believe, a website there that deals with immune systems and the microbiota. So some foods, natural foods that are immune boosting. Cruciferous vegetables are at the top of this list. And those include broccoli, Brussels sprouts, cabbage, bok choy, which we will be using in this recipe today, cauliflower, collards, kale, and kohlrabi. Now you're going to notice in the blog that I don't have bok choy on that list. It is a cruciferous vegetable. It was just a matter of space that we couldn't put every single cruciferous vegetable in there, but it definitely is. The next are leafy green vegetables, spinach, microgreens, watercress, arugula, Swiss chard, beets, and turnip greens. So that's the greens part. Now this is one of the most important, and it is mushrooms. We are going to be using the shiitakes in this recipe, but also maitake, also known as hen of the woods, enoki, oyster mushrooms, and lion's mane are all mushrooms that have these properties. So here we are in winter, and citrus, this is the season for citrus, and citrus is another powerhouse of immune boosting properties. So oranges, lemons, limes, grapefruit, tangerine, clementines are all on this list. Also on the list of plant-based foods that are powerful immune boosters are garlic, turmeric, ginger, almonds, red peppers, papaya, kiwi, pomegranates, sweet potatoes, sunflower seeds, miso, and wheat germ. So within that list, we're going to be, in this recipe, we have ginger, sweet potatoes, and miso. So could we please put the recipe up? And I'm going to adjust my computer. Okay. So as we go down the list of ingredients, you can see that this recipe incorporates a lot of immune boosting ingredients, which I sourced from my local CSA box. Bok choy, as I mentioned, a cruciferous vegetable, shiitake mushrooms, ginger, sweet potatoes as well, and miso paste, which I did not source from my CSA box. These particular ingredients are powerhouses of immune boosting properties, and at the same time create a Japanese flavor profile in a nutritious soup. Kombu and seaweed, you see on the list, they contain vitamins and minerals, and tofu is a source of plant protein. On this list, I've also added the options, and these are optional, of a jammy egg for more protein, and soba noodles to create a more filling meal if needed. And I offer substitutions of spinach in place of the bok choy, and store-bought miso broth in place of the water. So let's start cooking. I have a stock pot here, and I am going to start putting different ingredients in that. And I have a sweet potato here. I do have it already prepped, but I just wanted to kind of show you the size and how you might prep your sweet potato. And you can use a vegetable peeler, or you could use a paring knife. So a vegetable peeler is not necessary. I find the the vegetable peeler a little easier. And then what I'm going to do is cut it into approximately 1-inch squares. So something like this, I would cut into squares about this big. And I'm going to add this to the, it's one large, this would be considered a small, so I would go with 2 or 3 of these. So we're going to put the sweet potato that's been chopped up into our stock pot. The next ingredient that I am going to talk about that was at the top of the list is kombu. And this is a seaweed. And it usually comes in sheets about that size. You can cut this with your scissors. And so I'm going to put a piece about this big, I'll put both pieces into the stock pot as well. So the next ingredient are shiitake mushrooms. And as you can see, I have them here. And I am just going to kind of slice them up. Now, I like this soup because I consider it kind of a rustic provincial style. So things don't have to be cut, perfectly. And so here I have my shiitake mushrooms, and they also go in here. Then ginger. So we all know ginger is antimicrobial. It's a great for immune boosting spice. And we want to use fresh ginger. So with this piece of ginger, I think I have a 2 inches long. These are called ginger fingers. It kind of resembles my thumb. And I'm going to just peel off the brown part. And I have my little grater. So I have a little miniature grater here. And I just grate it. And this will really open up the flavors. You can also chop it, but I find that grating it really, really opens up the flavors. So we have the ginger, we have the sweet potatoes, we have the shiitake mushrooms, and we have the kombu. And I am going to put the ginger in there. And then we are going to put 5 cups of water, or you could use a store-bought miso broth. And this will now go onto the stovetop to simmer for approximately 20 minutes. Okay, so while that is simmering, we're going to prep some of the other ingredients in this recipe. The next one is the bok choy. And I have kind of a regular bok choy here, and I have a baby bok choy. And I've done a little bit of prep with that. So I like to peel off the leaves and cut this little part out. That'll go in your compost. And what I like to do with the bok choy, I separate all the leaves. With this particular recipe, I like to take the green part off, and we will use this, but I like to put that in at the very end, and it will cook and it will wilt, but it's, if you're using spinach, I also like to kind of put it in at the last minute, so as not to overcook it. And I will show you, and I'll just cut it into pieces like this, the white part. Okay, and I'm going to add that. I'm going to cut up these, and sometimes the very small little leaves like this, I just like to leave those whole. And that's all, you know, about presentation, that I don't feel like they necessarily need to be chopped up. I've got a little bit of brown spot there, and so I've put those aside. And as I said, this is a kind of rustic provincial Japanese style soup. And I wanted to tell you one of my inspirations. I don't know if anyone is familiar with her. She is a Buddhist nun, and I am going to mispronounce her name, but her name is Jean Quan, I believe. That's how you pronounce it. And she does something called temple cooking. And I'm just very inspired by her, her methodology of like, this should be contemplative. That's why I have the incense burning. I have a little sake here. I'll have a little sip. I was sipping on green tea earlier. That this should be a kind of cooking meditation, particularly with this dish, and that it should be about relaxing and being present with the food that you are creating. So for the moment, I am going to put the bok choy away, and we're going to move on to prepping the green onions. So the recipe calls for 3 green onions, and this type of green onion. So as far as presentation and kind of Japanese aesthetics, I like to cut these on the diagonal because it will just make a much nicer sort of presentation. So we're cutting them kind of like this. And what I like to do is, in this particular recipe, as you can see, I have the sort of whitish part separated from the greens. And I'm going to use some of the greens at the end as a garnish. So I'm going to cut off these little somewhat wilted ends. And anything that just doesn't sort of look super fresh, and I'm going to cut these at an angle, and maybe that will go in, and then these I will reserve for garnish. Okay. And I'm also going to put these aside for the moment. Now I'm going to move on to the tofu. And let me talk a little bit about the type of tofu. So I like to use an extra firm sprouted tofu because you do not want to use a silken tofu. In this recipe, it will just kind of fall apart and disintegrate and in your broth. So the tofu, I'm just going to cut it into cubes. Okay. So we have our tofu, and I'm going to set that aside as well. And remember, we have our broth simmering on the stove. So another ingredient is sesame seeds. Now, I like to use both the white and the black sesame seeds. I toast the white ones. I don't necessarily toast the black sesame seeds. And the reason that I use black sesame seeds with the toasted white ones is simply an aesthetic thing. So it you know, it doesn't really, you can't really tell the flavor. But how I will toast these, you can do it two ways. You could do it in a nonstick skillet. And when they are, they will start out white. And when they are just lightly toasted like this, they will be ready. You can also put them out on a baking sheet and toast them in a 350-degree oven. Keep an eye on them because they do toast quickly. And so we'll be coming back to this ingredient. So let's see, going down our list, we've done the bok choy, we've done the tofu, we have done the onions, we've talked about the sesame seeds. Now I want to move on to preparing the miso. So I buy, it is a mellow white. There is also red miso. And miso is basically a fermented soybean. And you can find this very easily these days. Let me get some. Okay. So now this is a very important aspect of this recipe, is that you do not want to boil the miso paste. Boiling the miso paste will kill the active beneficial bacteria and the probiotic properties. So this is very, very important step. We are instead going to make a slurry. And the term slurry implies, sometimes in other cooking, in Western cooking, it's a little bit of broth and a little bit of flour. In this case, it's 1 tablespoon of the miso paste I'm going to put in here. And with that, I am going to add a little bit of cooled broth, which I have set aside. And then I am going to break up the miso paste with a little whisk. You can do it with a fork. And I'm basically making a very, very smooth sauce. You could call it a sauce that is just the broth and that piece of miso paste. And one thing you do need to remember about miso paste, you do have to refrigerate it. It's an active probiotic. So it does not want to sit out on the shelf, and it wants to be chilled, and it does not want to get boiled. So I have a nice slurry, and I'm trying to get the lumps out. And so this is about 1 tablespoon of miso paste with, I would say, maybe another tablespoon of the cooled broth, or a slightly warm broth. But just remember not to put a hot broth in here. The hot broth will go in, but this will be divided into the bowls. And when we assemble, I will show you how to do that. So that's set aside. Now, these are 2 optional ingredients. If you are using soba noodles, and the only reason that I sort of suggest these as optional is sometimes people want a heartier soup. They want something that's a little bit more filling. So I will show you. Here are some soba noodles I've purchased. And you would cook them according to directions. These particular soba noodles, I believe they took 4 minutes, and then I placed them in cold water. And so I will also set these aside and show you how to assemble them. These seem to have done very well just in cold water. If you would like to add a little bit more flavor, you could also use a little bit of toasted sesame oil and just kind of toss them in the toasted sesame oil. Okay, and another optional ingredient is the jammy egg. And this is to add a little bit more protein. Now, jammy eggs, I'm sure if you've tasted ramen, you've seen that sort of egg that the white part is cooked, but the interior is a little bit gooey and bright yellow. So we're going to do a big reveal here because I made this jammy egg earlier today. And I hope that it has turned out in all of its jamminess. And yes, I'm surprised. So this particular egg, it's very easy to make. You can take a room temperature egg and you put it into boiling water for exactly 6.5 minutes. And you carefully place the eggs in the boiling water so that they don't crack. And then you will, after 6.5 minutes, you remove this egg and you submerge it in ice water. And I'm going to put this to the side. And then when it's cool, you will peel it. And it will also help. Peeling it for it to be submerged in the ice water. So, you know, we could wait 20 minutes, but I am going to now take the stock pot. And we are going to now add our bok choy. And for the moment, I would probably add the leaves at the last 5 minutes, but we're going to assemble pretty quickly. So the bok choy goes in here. The white and greenish parts with some of the reserve for garnish greens go in. And the tofu will go in. So I will kind of gently stir this. And at this point, you also, you want to check with a paring knife your sweet potato should be, you should be able to put the tip of your knife into the sweet potato, and it should be tender, but it should be firm. So this will go back on the stove for another 10 minutes. So through the miracle of pre-prepping, I am going to assemble the dish because I did another stock pot. So this recipe makes 4 servings. So you would have 4 bowls that you would be working with. And the first thing we would do is equally divide the miso paste. So this is the slurry that we just made. And we put a little bit of that into the bowl. Then we put a little bit of the braggs. So I think we have 1 tablespoon of liquid aminos, and these are kind of a all-purpose seasoning from soy protein. I prefer them to soy sauce, and we are going to so it would be about 1/4 tablespoon for each. So I'm just going to kind of eyeball this with the tablespoon. So in the recipe, you'll see, this is also to taste. So in the recipe, it's 1 tablespoon. That is for 4 servings. The next thing that we are going to add is the actual soup. So I have here the sweet potato, the tofu, the bok choy, the ginger, and this has been simmering for the complete 30 minutes. And I'm going to put it in and get a little bit of everything into each bowl with a good amount of broth. And you see I have kind of these, the wilted leaves, and I've got tofu and the shiitake mushrooms. Now, of course, this is optional, and but I'm going to just add a little soba noodles. I am also going to add half of the jammy egg. And I'm going to chop these up a little bit more. So I'm going to add a little bit more of the green onion on top as a garnish. And it's nice to do kind of an elegant presentation. It's, as I said, it's a rustic dish, but I sort of like to do the presentation. And then those toasted sesame seeds, I'm going to put a little bit of the white toasted sesame seeds and a little bit of the black. And I'm going to add a couple of things that I don't have on the recipe, but my parsley, my flat leaf parsley has sprouted, you know, it's gone to flower, as they say. And I just thought, these are so beautiful. They smell so wonderful. They smell like really intense parsley, that I'm going to put a little bit of that on top. And I've got a little bit of nori. And I'm just going to kind of wrap that up and add that. And 2 of the seasonings that that I have are, this one is sashimi togarashi, excuse my Japanese, and it is a red pepper flake. And this is something that I would put on the table so that people can put it on themselves. And then this is another, this is fukaki norikomi, excuse my Japanese. And that's something also that I would put on the table for people to have. And then I would serve it with soup spoons. And I've got some chopsticks here, Japanese chopsticks. And you could serve this with a green tea or a nice artisanal sake. That would be great. So this is the finished soup. Oregato. And I'm going to pivot to the questions.
Yeah, thank you, Lisa. I know you're going to switch locations here. She's going to
Yes.
set up in her chew and chat zone, is what you call it, which is really fun. While she's doing that, I just want to draw your attention to a survey link, which is in the chat. I believe Allison just posted it. This really helps us a lot with our reporting back to the funder. So if you guys wouldn't mind filling that out at some point before the end, that would be awesome. It's pretty short, like 5 questions or so. And we do have a list of questions for you, Lisa.
Okay.
Yeah, so just want to make sure I got it all here. So the first one is about mushrooms. Someone was wondering about sources of shiitake mushrooms, and also if the fresh ones are not available, could you substitute with dried?
Yes, definitely. You can substitute with dried. I would soak them. If you're using the dried, I would soak them in a little water or miso broth to just kind of rehydrate them.
Yeah. And I have a little tidbit on that. There is something out there called Solano Mushroom Farm. They sell at some farmers markets. I know they're in Berkeley and Pleasanton, I think. Ironically, I don't think that they are at any of the Solano County farmers markets. They used to be in Vacaville. I think the owner was relocating to somewhere closer to Yolo County, but they have excellent mushrooms. They're cultivated and he's got all kinds of varieties. So if anybody wants to check that out, feel free. Solano Mushroom Farm, highly recommend them.
Also, these shiitakes came in my CSA box, as did the sweet potato and the bok choy and the ginger. Right,
great. Next question is about you mentioned a nonstick pan for the seeds, and do you have a recommendation on one that's a little bit healthier and not the traditional Teflon ones, which would not be immune boosting?
Oh, yes, definitely, definitely. Actually, I just gave that option. I tend to toast them on my cookie sheet in the oven, but not everybody has a cookie sheet. So yes, I'd say if you can, skip the nonstick pan. I mean, you could do it in any type of pan. The sesame seeds aren't really going to stick.
Yeah, I'd agree with that. I've done it in just regular stainless, and not stainless steel, but you know, like an all clad or a whatever type of pan. Yeah, it works. You answered the first part of the next question, which is the soup serves about 4 servings, but there was a question about freezing it. Can it freeze? And if so, when would you freeze? And then maybe you would add in other ingredients later.
Honestly, I'll tell you, if you needed to freeze it, this is part of the beauty of this soup, is that it is extremely fresh. It is fresh vegetables. But I think if you did need to make the broth ahead of time and you wanted to freeze it, I would do the ginger, the shiitake mushrooms, and the kombu, and make a broth. And I would also recommend using distilled water, because sometimes our tap water is a little chlorinated, and that chlorinated taste, this is a very light soup, so you really taste all the ingredients. And then I would probably prep some of the other ingredients at the time of serving. The bok choy is not going to hold up very well freezing.
Right. Yeah.
And I've never had frozen tofu.
Yeah, that's a good point. I would add that in at the end. Yes, for sure.
Sure, what that would be like.
Right. I think it's going to get watery, and you're going to have a dramatic texture change on the tofu. Yeah. There was a question about miso. This just came in, but I kind of had it on my list earlier. So how long does miso last in the fridge once opened?
Well, I checked on this because I had some miso in my fridge, and I bought it probably 8 months ago, And because I remember when I bought it, and I am shocked that it's still good until April 2022. So it can stay in the refrigerator for, I guess, about 8 months to a year.
Yeah. I think it does have a pretty long life. Yeah.
Because it is fermented soybeans.
Yeah.
So the longer it ferments, the more, happy bacteria we're creating.
Yeah, I think it might oxidize a little bit on top. I think if you push like a little plastic wrap or some kind of parchment paper, something on top of it to keep the air away, then it'll help preserve it a little bit.
In fact, my miso comes in a little tub, and it has 2 little layers. So it has a little sort of shiny paper that goes on top of it, and then it has plastic, and then it has its lid. So,
right.
Yeah.
And just a side note on miso, if anybody has an Eat Well CSA subscription, Lorraine, the owner, does source miso, and you can get it as an add-on. So check that out. She likes to try to develop these partnerships with our other purveyors that have good quality stuff. And so she does have a link there. They also would have bok choy and sweet potatoes coming up. If not now, they would have it in their CSA boxes.
And I would say that either white or red is fine to use in this recipe. Either one will work.
Oh, right. I feel like a red would be a little more hardy and maybe used in more winter applications. Yeah, that's a good point. Someone was asking about the aminos. Can you use coconut aminos?
Sure. Yeah, definitely.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I have an intruder here. You're on a live cooking class.
So yes, I'm a real advocate of Bragg's aminos. I really love using them instead of soy sauce. It's not as salty, and it's got all of its, soy protein.
Yeah, I like them too. Someone was asking about when the soup was added. Did you add it when it was hot or just warm?
Well, that's a very good question. For this particular recipe, I would add a little bit of, warm broth, and then I would put the final on, because, by the time it's going into the serving bowls, it is not going to be, boiling hot, and it's not going to kill the, the probiotic properties. But yes, you want to just not put a boiling soup broth into the miso slurry.
Right. Someone was asking why you peeled the sweet potatoes, because the skin would also have some vitamins.
Definitely. Yeah, and I tell you that I don't throw anything away. My dog loves the peels, so I put them. I chop them up for her. But yes, it's your preference. And as I said, this is a really rustic recipe. So yes, you can leave the peels on. And of course, there's another option that you could roast the sweet potato in the oven, and it will give it a richer, kind of deeper flavor. So, and you could leave the peel on. So yeah, I just, I'm trying to streamline it and just make it all a kind of one pot meal, but definitely you could roast the sweet potato prior and use it that way.
Mm-hmm. Thank you. Someone wanted more information about sprouted tofu. Have the soybeans started to grow, and why do you like it better than just normal, like firm tofu?
Okay. It's a little bit, how could I describe it? I like sprouted tofu because it's kind of, a comparison would be whole wheat bread compared to white bread. It's a little bit more sort of dense, and it's probably a little bit better nutritionally. And it's got a little bit more nutty flavor. And I don't want to, do an ad, but I get my sprouted tofu at Trader Joe's.
Okay, good to know. Good to know. Sesame seeds, is there a nutritional difference between the black and the white?
I don't know the answer to that question. That's a very good question.
I don't either. My guess would be not much maybe, but I don't know. It's a good question. We'll have to Google that one. A question about the kombu, that's traditional, and what about other seaweeds?
Oh, well, we put other seaweed. Now, I love seaweed. That's why I put a little nori, a little piece of nori in there as well. The other thing is you can eat the kombu. If you like, you could also sort of slice it up and divide it into the bowls. And then this, here I go again, furikake nori komu. This is also just seaweed and seasonings. So yes, they're high in iodine. It's good for your immune system.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. Okay, so would they be kind of interchangeable then? You could.
I think you can, yes, they are interchangeable, but more seaweed, the better.
Mm-hmm.
And my dog also really loves the kombu, so I saved the kombu and the sweet potato peelings for her.
All right, thank you, Diana. Someone did a little black and white sesame seed search. So there's something in the chat in case you're interested in learning about that.
Out.
Yeah. Someone was asking about the sweet potatoes. So do the Okinawan purple sweet potatoes have the same health benefits as the orange ones?
Wow, well, that's purple foods. I mean, they're all very colorful. I think it would make a beautiful soup either way. But I do not know if one is more nutritious. Perhaps the person who did the research on the sesame seeds wants to try that one.
Yeah, right. We'll look it up. Let's see. Someone was asking about the miso, although I think another attendee answered it. They were just wondering about uses for miso other than soup, and the answer came through about salad dressings and marinades and dips, and yeah, there's all kinds of things you can do with miso, more than you think. It could definitely be like a marinade for fish, you know, if you're doing like a Japanese fish. It's salad dressings for sure. Yeah, there's many options there. And then there's a question regarding the Bragg's aminos again. How is low sodium tamari different from the Bragg's aminos?
That is also a good question, which I do not have the answer. But yes, low salt, low sodium tamari is a really good substitute. Mm-hmm,
mm-hmm. Yeah. Okay, so that seems to be, oh, here comes something on the sweet potatoes, purple versus orange, both nutritious but with different emphasis. Yeah, that was going to be my guess, is that they probably each have their own little special quality. So anyway, there's a link there in the chat.
And as we know, Stephanie, I mean, any purple foods are really good, high in antioxidants.
Yeah.
So yeah. And I think this soup would be really fantastic with the Okinawa purple.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. I was even thinking about cabbage too when you were making it. If you didn't have bok choy on hand, I feel like a cabbage would be a good substitute. Of course, if you put in purple cabbage, your soup's going to turn a funky purple color, but it's all healthy.
I think a Napa cabbage as a substitute for the bok choy would work as well.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Let's see if there's anything else here. Oh, someone's suggesting, yes, both orange and purple sweet potatoes would be very beautiful. Indeed. a lot of Japanese food is about the presentation, and they are full believers in eating with your eyes before you eat with your mouth. So the more beautiful it is, the better in Japanese cuisine. So I think that that's all of the questions. Yeah, I think that might be it. And it's 6 o'clock. So good timing, everyone.
Well, I want to say arigato to everyone. Thanks for joining us. Hopefully we'll see you through 2022.